It's time!
What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Pickin Fights. We're together again. I'm Keith, joined by my amigo, my co-host, compadre, Tom. Tom, how are you today, my friend?
Doing good. Happy Labor Day to you, Keith, and to anybody watching at home. And I guess if you're watching it today, watching it live, we thank you. If you're watching it in the future, that's good too. Hope you had a great Labor Day.
Yeah, absolutely. And special thanks, to a lot of people that work thankless jobs, blue-collar America, the men and women that are the backbone of our country, of our society, doing those jobs day in, day out. You always see a lot of stuff on other holidays, thank you for this, thank you for that. But you never really see a lot of thank yous for the laborers and working class that are the reason that we celebrate Labor Day. So thank you for that. And another thank you to the UFC for putting this card together. It looked so abysmal a few months ago. And a few late additions to the card have actually made it one that we're kind of looking forward to. I don't want to speak for you, Tom, but I'm looking forward to it. What do you think? You looking forward to this one?
Yeah, I mean, it all started, about 4 or 5 weeks ago when Dana White was asked at a press conference about UFC 279, and he promised to bolster it up, and he was going to add a bunch of names that people are going to be really excited about. But, yes, I am super excited to watch the card. There's good fights up and down. There's a lot of recognizable names, but here's the reality of the situation. Tony Ferguson coming back against Jingliang up at 170 pounds. There's a lot of catchweight bouts on this card because of the last-minute nature of a lot of it. We have some switched opponents at the last minute coming in on shorter notice than other people. So I think because of that reason, we could either see a lot of tentativeness coming out of people because they hadn't had their traditional camp, or we could go in there, we could see a lot of knockouts. We could see better fights. And this may end up being an advertisement as to why the UFC should have maybe more weight classes or do hydration checks. If guys aren't cutting as much weight, like you take, Jailton Almeida, a guy who's came in there gigantic before and really big, cuts a lot of weight for the 205-pound division, coming in at 220 catch weight, we could see a lot more explosive performances. And then maybe the UFC would adopt maybe something like what ONE FC does with hydration checks and do weight classes every 10 pounds instead of doing 15 pounds or 20 pounds at the higher weight, or even higher. So I'm excited to see what'll happen. A lot of unknowns, a lot of question marks, but here to try and make sense of it with you.
Yeah, I'm super looking forward to that main event. It's what happens when an unstoppable force meets an object that simply does not give a fuck. I'm really looking forward to it. But we can kick this one off, as we always do, by asking all the people at home to please like, comment, and subscribe. Guys, we are here. We're talking live. There's a chat. Comment some stuff down below in the chat. Let us know what you're thinking of our picks, what your picks are. And then, if you like and subscribe to our content and to our channel, it really helps us out, and we really appreciate that. Give us some follows on our social media as well as on Spotify. Subscribe there too. Give us some follows on our social media @_PickinWinners on Twitter and Instagram, @Pickin Fights. Our names are in the corners right below our faces. I'm @Pickin Keith, and you got Tom @PickinFightsTom. So now we can jump in with the real heat, and that is with our prelim notables. And my first one is going to be Jake Collier over Chris Barnett. This is one that pains me a lot because I am a big fan of Chris Barnett. I love everything about this guy's personality. He's so fun, so entertaining, even when he loses, even when he lost to, Ben Rothwell, where he gassed himself out and basically, put the choke around his own neck. But still love everything about this guy. And so it does pain me to have to pick against him this week, because Jake Collier did look really good in his last fight against Andrei Arlovsky. Not really good, but he did bring a lot of things to the table that I don't think that Chris Barnett's going to be able to keep up with in this fight. Chris Barnett doesn't really have the best stamina. He looks best when the fight ends within 2 minutes. And this guy, Jake Collier, who, remind me, Tom, what did he used to be, a welterweight beforehand? Or
Yeah, so he's kind of had the exact opposite transition as the guy who just fought Israel Adesanya, Jared Cannonier. Cannonier fought at 265 heavyweight, went down to 205 and then 85. we've seen the opposite happen here for Jake Collier, where he was at 85, bulked up to 205, and now at 265, tipping the scales. And it's not what you would necessarily call healthy weight. There's a lot of flubber that goes into that, and Chris Barnett too. So.
Yeah, no, Jake Collier looks like he didn't go to fight camp. He went to a reverse fat camp. He got really, really big, really fast. But for a guy that got that big and that, chunky, put on that bad kind of weight, it looks like he still has really good stamina. He still brings a lot of volume to the table in his fights, getting Andrei Arlovsky in some tricky situations up against the fence. So, with the stamina that he has and the volume that he throws in his most recent fights against a guy like Chris Barnett, who doesn't really have stamina, and much as I like the guy and he's got a great personality, he does tend to just give up when the chips don't fall in his way. So, for all those reasons, I have to go with Jake Collier. I see a situation where maybe Chris Barnett gets just tired, drops his hands, and gets knocked out. Don't want to see it. Love Chris Barnett. But what do you think, Tom? You like that pick or?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And when you're looking at a guy like Chris Barnett, he's super fun, has a great personality. But at the end of the day, his win over Jean Valente, I think that was a retirement fight for him anyway. Or, Jean Valente is not the top level of competition. Not to say that Jake Collier really is, but, he has a lot more going for him. And when you talk about, just the pure stamina aspect, he is decent enough on the feet. Like you said, being able to be in there and contend with Andrei Arlovsky, a UFC vet of, such a long time. To go in there and still be able to compete, even at a weight class that's maybe not atypical or not normal for Jake Collier. Who knows what's normal for him at this point? But I like his stamina. I like his somewhat intelligible fight IQ and a little bit of a better competition level throughout his career. And I'm just concerned that Chris Barnett, especially 265 at 5'9", I'm not going to be able to hold up, really even in the second half of the first round. So I just think it's a much safer pick going with Jake Collier, as much as we like and love watching Biggie Boy Chris Barnett fight. Another one that I wanted to get into really quickly is Haleli Atang over Chad Engler. I think this is Alatang's fight to lose pretty much. Looking at the fight pages on Tapology, he is 3-1-1 in his last 5 getting a unanimous decision, but ended up being reversed to a draw to Gustavo Lopez 11 months ago. He's been pretty active, coming off a win against Kevin Kroon via TKO. His opponent, this is going to be, I believe, only his second fight in the UFC. He had a Contender Series split decision win, got in, 11 months ago to the UFC, and then after that, he had a counter left to ground and pound TKO win over Jesse Strader. But at the end of the day, he's 35 years old. He's still pretty much, I would say, like a rookie in the UFC. Not that Haleli Alatang is that bred, tried and true, but he's got wins over Dana Baccarel. He's got wins over Ryan Benoit, and split decision 2 years ago. He dropped one to Casey Kenny. Had that win that was overturned against Gustavo Lopez, and then another win recently against Kevin Kroon. I just think he has a lot more going for him at 30 years old. He's going to have a reach advantage. He's going to be they're going to be roughly about the same height, and Chad has had a pretty bad offensive takedowns and defensive takedowns and grappling game to boot. That I really like Haleli Alatang, the Mongolian Knight, in this matchup early on the prelims. And if there's one more that I want to talk about real quick, it's going to be Johan Lainez over Darian Weeks. And Lainez has shown that, especially later in the fights, he can keep up a high level of competition, to which Darian Weeks, hasn't shown that. As time gone on throughout the fight, he just begins to wear. Also to mention that he's coming in on short notice. Johan Lainez was previously scheduled. I think his previous opponent, if my computer can keep up with how fast my brain's moving, Johan Lainez was scheduled to fight Miguel Baeza, but Baeza got hurt. They had to reschedule. In comes Darian Weeks on short notice to open up UFC 279. I think, even though Darian Weeks is going to have a 4-inch reach disadvantage coming into this, going to be the shorter guy. He's got 2 years younger, but I just think Johan Lainez at this point in his career is going to have a little bit more tools to work with, especially later on in the fight. He's got a loss to Gabe Green in his last fight 4 months ago, so a little bit of a quick turnaround for Johan Linus, but I think planning to go up against Miguel Baeza and then getting a subbed in short-term Darian Weeks. And Darian Weeks, he looked solid against Ian Gary, but I'm just not so sold on Ian Gary as a whole. I think these guys' styles match up well. And then given the preparedness of Johan Linus, the short-termness of Darian Weeks, the reach advantage for Johan Linus, and honestly, the fact that he's a plus 110 underdog, I really like the bet on Johan Linus this week.
Yeah, those are really solid picks. I like the Linus pick and the Alatang pick as well, especially with Darian Weeks, for the Linus pick coming in on short notice. Really like that one a lot. So one that I want to mention, and this is, why we switched over to notables from locks, what they previously were. Super notable this week. We have Norma Dumont going up against Danielle Wolf. Danielle Wolf is a former professional boxer, has taken a couple of years off to start training MMA, coming in there against Norma Dumont, who, is a well-known stand-up striker for, a female UFC fighter. And, someone commented that's not the only thing that's 4 inches. What's up, Shane? Wonder what else is 4 inches. Anyways, you got Danielle Wolf. She has one professional MMA fight so far, was signed to the UFC. She's 39 years old. Anyways, just to make this one quick, I like the unknowns in this one. We don't know what Danielle Wolf's, grappling situation is, how good she is in those situations. And then you have Norma Dumont, who is notoriously pretty not great against grapplers. She had a bad going the last time against Macy Chasson, who got her up against the cage, basically pinned her up against the cage for 15 minutes, landed a lot of body knees. I like this one for Danielle Wolf because even if she's not great on the ground, being that she is a professional boxer with a long-time tenured career, typically boxers, are pretty good at clinching. And it seems that that's where Norma Dumont has a really weak spot. So if Danielle Wolf has the ability to get her up against the cage, work from there, plus, at a plus 260 underdog, that's really what's doing it for me with Danielle Wolf. I'm gonna stake a little bit on Danielle Wolf this week and, just see what happens. Not super confident in it, but that's why these are the notables, not just the locks. What do you think about that one, Tom?
Yeah, this one, it's really a crapshoot. And like you said, we haven't, for Danielle Wolf, she was signed to the UFC 2 years ago and hasn't fought a couple of things. I think a fight had dropped out, and then you have the COVID layoff. It's really hard to know where her grappling ability is at this point. And if Norma Dumont, with her, that a lot more of the mixed martial arts experience, how much that's really going to lend here. But looking at the lines, I think the lines are pretty far apart on this fight. You have Danielle Wolf at plus 280, Norma Dumont at minus 340. In what I would, we don't know what the grappling is going to be like. And if it's going to be a stand-up battle, I kind of want to give the edge to Danielle Wolf. She's faster. She doesn't have any professional boxing, but has a pretty extensive amateur boxing record. So I don't like where the lines are at. With that being said, I think I would maybe sprinkle a little bit on Danielle Wolf, but it's really hard to say. It's really hard to pick because we haven't seen very much action from her to know where Danielle Wolf is going to be at. 2-year layoff, 39 years old. There's a lot of question marks. Be interested to see what happens, but I don't know if I would want to bet it. Maybe some chump change on Danielle Wolf just because I think it's a coin flip. And if you're going to get plus 280 odds on what I think is a coin flip fight, that might be worth some.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody told me pick heads or tails, if the one you pick, you get a plus 280 payout, I'll take that anytime. Just a little bit on it. Like you said, some chump change, a little baby wager. But that's it for our prelim notables. We'll dive into the main card, and I'll let you kick off this first one, Tom. How about that? We've got Johnny Walker versus Jan Cutelaba. Who do you got?
Well, real quick before we do that, I did want to talk really quickly about Hakeem Dawodu taking on Julian Juicy J. Arosa. Juicy J. Arosa has had a very up and down UFC career. His 5-on-in is not that bad with only one loss to Sungwoo Choi, but this is a guy who, I just think Hakeem Dawodu is going to be able to stand on the feet with him. He's very, very fast. He's got really good leg kicks, especially counter leg kicks or reverse leg kicks. If you go to kick him, he's going to turn right around and kick you right back. He's going to have a significant height disadvantage, but only a 2-inch reach disadvantage. I think he's going to be able to get in there. I think he's going to be the quicker guy, and I think ultimately what's going to end up being a stand-up battle. That's not Hakeem Dawodu is not somebody that you want to have that stand-up battle with. This guy is only lost in his last 5 is against Moisar Evalev, and his last one out, he had a really good. Strong showing against Mike Trezano 6 months ago, so able to heal up from that. He has a split decision win over Julio Arce. I like Hakeem Dawodu, and I like his striking ability, so I'm going to go with him as far as my my last prelim notable or prelim lock. Moving up onto the main card, like Keith originally had said, Johnny Walker and Jan Cutelaba. This is going to be a fight over 2 guys who really come out really fast inside of the UFC. Or they in their fights they usually finish it in the first round. Outside of that, looking at Jan Cutelaba, he's had an up and down career. He comes out and he's a madman. I like to think of him as somebody who just comes out. He's got a decent amount of skill, but he just relies on his power and the craziness. He's really a brawler in every sense of the word. And then you look at Johnny Walker, and he's recently transitioned to SBG, Ireland. So he is working with Conor McGregor's coach. And, just by looking through his Instagram, he seems extremely motivated. Saying that last time out in the short loss that he had against Jamal Hill, he didn't get to showcase really all the improvements that he's made, and he had a really good career trajectory. He celebrated a little bit too hard, pulled or injured his shoulder. I think maybe his chest. So that took some time to heal up, came back, and, just never got to put on the performance that he wanted to in a true mastery. He had, but then again, he's also fighting guys like, and of course, as I was going to say, it just escaped me. But who did he fight? His last fight was against Jamal Hill, which, obviously Jamal Hill is going to be a really good opponent. And then before that, he fought
who was it?
Thiago Santos. He
Yeah.
thought Thiago Santos to a decision loss. And I know Thiago Santos hasn't had the best showing as of late, but he's also fighting the top level of competition that there is in the 205-pound division. So he's got that win over Ryan Spann. He has the loss to Nikita Krylov and a loss to Corey Anderson. Johnny Walker has a bit of a glass chin, and I definitely see a world where Jan Cutelaba could come out and throw a lot of crazy punches and find that and find his traditionally glass chin. But Jan Cutelaba is a guy whose most recent win is against Devin Clark in a fight where he punched his front teeth out and used his grappling ability to kind of lean on Devin Clark and get that win. I think Johnny Walker having the 5, 6, 7-inch reach advantage and a much bigger height advantage. I think he's going to show off his big frame here. I think he's going to use his anti-takedown and grappling defense, keep his fight standing, and then pick him apart from range. Ultimately, you got to imagine that was what made Conor really successful, was having that reach advantage and having that good karate stance with an active front leg and coming in and being really precise with his shots. There's no reason that Johnny Walker can't do that. We haven't seen him do that yet, but I just think in a matchup of guys that is going to have a crazy ending. We've seen, I think, a little bit more superstardom from Johnny Walker. He's a little bit more exciting. I think he has that it factor, especially at plus 185. I think I'm going to go with the underdog pick of Johnny Walker here. Because, again, similar to the other fights that we were talking about, Danielle Wolf, I think it's a little bit closer to a coin flip here. And at plus 185, I like Johnny Walker for the money.
Yeah, solid pick. I like it a lot. There are a couple things that I'm really worried about. I'm really worried about Johnny Walker's glass chin, like you mentioned. And he's just he's a human cartoon. Like the way that he fell against Jamal Hill was extremely cartoonish. Popping, I think it was his rotator cuff or tearing his rotator cuff while doing the most exaggerated worm ever. Also ridiculous. He's literally just a cartoon. And Jan Cutelaba is also kind of a goof, cartoon character in his own right. Goes in there screaming, stupid, super powerful. But yeah, that's about it. Not really super accurate. But I do like the Johnny Walker pick here. Like you mentioned, the reach advantage is going to be huge for him. And I think that Johnny Walker, I'd like to imagine, there's a lot of stuff that he's been saying, in interviews over the past couple of months since the Jamal Hill fight, that he's beginning to realize that this fast starting way is not, I can't quote him exactly, but fast starting maybe isn't the most successful route, plan of attack for him. And so maybe this is a little bit more of a reserved Johnny Walker going in there against Jan Cutelaba.
And one other thing I want to say too is that he's also been training, posted a couple pictures recently on Instagram, training with Khamzat Chimaev. So, if Cutelaba thinks he's going to come in there and try and out grapple him, this past few weeks of training camp with Khamzat Chimaev, both of them, getting ready for their fights that are on the same night. I think that really speaks to what we might see in terms of preparedness and ability to keep this fight standing. From Johnny Walker. And, hey, looking back in his heyday before he had that bit of a skid, he was really a fun and an exciting fighter. And just thinking of a guy who's going to have somewhat of the grappling ability of Khamzat Chimaev, if he can use his reach and his leverage, especially in the grappling ability to keep it standing, and then use that same reach to have a little bit of a Conor McGregor-esque style of fighting with precision power shots. That could be a really fun fighter. And at 205, in a division that's really strapped for superstars, I think that the ceiling for Johnny Walker is a lot higher here. So I'm expecting him to go out there, not expecting, but I'm hoping he goes out there and puts on something really interesting for us.
Yeah. Johnny Walker was like the prince that was promised at one point, like he was so super hype. I would like to see a W out of him. I want to see like these guys in that light heavyweight division. We had a lot of guys that were like super hyped up for a while there that really haven't panned out. Johnny Walker being one of them. And, I definitely think it's possible for him to get the win over Jan Cutelaba. Could Johnny Walker slip up, just literally just make a mistake and Jan Cutelaba catch him? Very possible. But Jan Cutelaba isn't really like the same Jan Cutelaba that we first saw, however many fights ago in the UFC. Sure, he punched Devin Clark's teeth out. But, you do something like that, like you should be able to finish somebody too. And I think maybe that was just a well-placed hit, and it wasn't I don't know, maybe it was super powerful. You got to be strong to punch somebody's guns out. But I feel like Jan Cutelaba, with the power that he has and the power that is on display, and he really tries to put this aura about him as like this Hulk guy. I feel like at this point, like he should be knocking a lot of dudes out, and he just hasn't been. So Johnny Walker, I think, is going to survive this one and probably come out on top. With all that being said, let's move on up to the next fight. We've got Irene Aldana versus Macy Chasson. And I'm going to go with another underdog in this one. I'm taking Macy Chasson plus 170. I'm going with a lot of underdogs on this one. But, real quick. Shane agrees, would like to see a win from Johnny Walker. He's still very promising. Absolutely. So, I'm going with Macy Chasson in this one. And that's just because of all the stuff that she showed us during that Norma Dumont fight. She was able to stand and scrap with Norma Dumont, who's, she's pretty stout, pretty powerful. She's got tree trunk legs. She's a little thick one. And Macy Chasson, a little bit more lanky, not as strong, becoming a really good point fighter. And then she's getting that grappling up to par. That's one thing I really noticed against Norma Dumont. Especially with Norma Dumont being I believe she's the shorter, stouter woman, definitely looks stronger. And the fact that Macy was able to control her the way that she did for a good chunk of that fight, put in a lot of work against the cage. I mean, Irene Aldana, she's really good. She's fought some of the top competition in the women's bantamweight division. But, Macy Chasson, she – can't remember. Did she move up for the Norma Dumont fight or? Well, anyways, I like Macy Chasson in this one. I like the underdog money, coin flip. Like we've been talking about, that plus 170 money is huge for me, and I like Macy Chasson's ability to improve with every single fight, and I think she'll come into this one and surprise a lot of people against Irene Aldana. What do you think about that one, Tom?
Yeah, I'm just running through Macy Chasson's record here. She was at 135 against Marion Renaud. She was at 45 for the loss to Raquel Pennington, at 45 for Norma Dumont. So this is her first time back at 35 since January, February, March of 2021 when she fought Marion Renaud, who I think was like 100 at the time. She also has a win over Shanna Young, who Shanna the Animal has not done, terribly much. And then in that split decision win over Norma Dumont, it was a tightly contested fight. I just think Irene Aldana is a little bit better of a ground game coming into this. And I think, at the lower weight that we're going to see a little bit of maybe a drawn out or, because at 5'11", Macy Chasson is a big girl, especially for 135. So getting all the way down there, I think Irene Aldana is going to be able to show off a little bit of the grappling if she needs to. And ultimately in her last few fights, Irene Aldana, that is, the KO, TKO, ground and pound of Yana Kunitskaya, she looked really, really good in that fight. She had the loss to Holly Holm. That was largely a striking battle, especially because Irene Aldana couldn't get Holly Holm to the ground. Holly Holm has been traditionally one of the best at being able to stay standing. That's how she's been able to implement her game plan. But getting those finished victories over Ketlin Vieira and the decision win over Vanessa Mallow, 2 years ago, I just think Irene Aldana has all the tools to get it done. I don't think Macy Chasson will necessarily get finished. I think it'll just be a display of someone who is, solid for the weight class, 5'9", Irene Aldana. But used to fighting at 35. You're going to have a little bit of a drain. Macy Chasson, she hasn't shown her best stuff at 35 either, certainly not against the better competition. So I'm going to go with actually a contrarian to you and go with Irene Aldana in this one.
No, fair. I mean, she is the favorite. The pick makes a lot of sense. I'm just feeling like this might be the week of the underdogs. Maybe a spoiler alert for my pick in the main event. No, I'm just kidding. But I definitely think, Macy Chasson has a better chance than a lot of people are giving her credit for. Because if you look at Tapology, it's pretty heavy in the Irene Aldana direction. So I don't know. I mean, I like Macy Chasson to surprise a lot of people, like the way that she did against Norma Dumont. Next up, we've got Kevin Holland versus Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez. And this is a catchweight bout at 180 pounds. I'm taking Kevin Holland in this one. Kevin Holland is on a roll ever since, moving from welterweight to, middleweight to welterweight. This is at 180. It's not at,
I think that's just them going to be avoiding the cut more than anything.
Yeah, because who's coming in on short notice? Both of these guys?
Both of them. Yeah, I think both of this fight was thrown together, part of that whole push by Dana White to make this fight interesting.
Yeah, and if you want to make a card more interesting, throw Kevin Holland on there. D-Rod's good competition for him. It's going to be a great stand-up fight. I just think Kevin Holland is, he's the more nimble guy. He's going to be bouncing around in there a lot more. D-Rod's more of a walk down, try and, just swing heavy shots. That's how he basically retired Kevin Lee, and or not retired him, but sent him over to Eagle FC. Was big heavy shots, and Kevin Holland is really a great counter striker. He's got super great length, really long arms, legs, and I think he's going to stand at range, step back, pick D-Rod apart. Lots of great kicks to the body. Land a couple to the head. Use those hands really, really well. Kevin Holland. He's just one of the most entertaining guys out there. D-Rod is pretty entertaining, but he's not as well known to the fans. Kevin Holland coming around about a minus 230 favorite in this one. I think this fight is kind of set up because, while D-Rod is fun and this will be entertaining, they know that Kevin Holland is more likely to pull out the win here, being that he is a fan favorite and they need to bolster this card up a little bit. That's why Kevin Holland was put on here in a situation that he could win. So, I see him doing his thing, picking apart D-Rod at range and D-Rod just walking forward, eventually maybe getting countered. I don't know if D-Rod's been knocked out in recent memory, something I got to check real quick. But, last loss to Nicholas Dalby by unanimous decision. And D-Rod's he's a great fighter. He's not the most powerful. I don't think Kevin Holland's going to chin him, but I think he's going to be able to outpoint strike him with that length and that reach that he's got. What do you think about this one, Tom?
Yeah, I like Kevin Holland a lot in this fight. And D-Rod, yeah, absolutely a very solid fighter, especially coming in on short notice against a lot of guys. 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, alum, I guess you could say, also training over at Syndicate MMA. I've liked Daniel Rodriguez. I've picked him in a lot of his recent fights, but the reality of the situation is, he's coming in at 35 years old. His last wins are against Kevin Lee, who's not in the UFC anymore, Preston Parsons, who was on Preston Parsons' debut, Preston Parsons took that fight on short notice. He, got the win over Mike Perry. He's got a loss to Nicholas Dalby. He's got a win over Dwight Dwight Grant after Dwight Grant, had went a long way to almost finish him at the beginning of that round. Then he was able to battle through and ultimately capitalize on Dwight Grant being a little bit too tired. At 170 pounds, D-Rod is a lot more of a boxer with fast leg kicks, and Kevin Holland is going to have a 7-inch reach advantage. And, you have guys like Marvin Vettori and Derek Brunson, who at 85 didn't want to stand and strike with Kevin Holland and just took him down and laid on him in order to score point in victories to get past them. And especially now that Kevin Holland has gotten his diet in check. He's looked really good at 170. Hasn't faced, terribly great competition, although he had finished Cowboy Oliveira with the right hook to ground strikes and, clubbed and subbed Tim Means with that beautiful dart stroke using those long limbs. I like Travis Lutter as his coach. Having a black belt that Kevin Holland has from Travis Lutter is definitely highly accredited. So if it gets to that ground game, I think he's really dangerous off of his back and submission style. And I also just think because he's put so much focus on his takedown defense that, D-Rod is not going to be able to take him down if he tries a desperation takedown. So I think in both areas of the ground game, Kevin Holland's going to have the advantage. I don't see D-Rod taking Kevin Holland down and laying on him to advance all the way to a victory. And I think Kevin Holland from the outside is going to be able to use his kicks, use his punches, go in there, throw those heavy overhands and the uppercuts, and he's going to land on D-Rod. And I don't know if he'll end up getting him out of there, but at 35 years old, having this fight on short notice, but then both of these guys aren't cutting as much as they normally do. Maybe this one goes to decision, but either way, I'm taking Kevin Holland, even at minus 215 for the money line. I'm taking Kevin Holland, and I'm going to feel pretty good about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I like the Kevin Holland by decision pick a lot here, just because D-Rod does have a good chin on him. But that was a great point that you brought up about D-Rod not being able to even pull off a desperation takedown against Kevin Holland because Kevin Holland's takedown defense has improved so much over the past year and a half. All right, so we'll move on up to the co-main event. And we've got Jingliang versus Tony Ferguson, and taking Tony Ferguson here. Typically I wouldn't bet on Tony Ferguson, but there's something telling me he has a good shot in this fight. And, I kind of believe in Tony Ferguson in this one. Jingliang is a dog, has serious power, and it's really not the most ideal matchup for a guy that was put out with one of the most devastating front kicks in the history of the sport, outside of maybe the one by Anderson Silva back in the day. But, Michael Chandler absolutely destroyed Tony Ferguson. Now it's a few months later, Tony Ferguson's back. Don't know what the recovery for his chin's going to look like, but
or his brain.
His brain. It's probably still rattling around within that cage of his skull that he has. But I don't know. I like the stand-up that Tony Ferguson was showing in that Michael Chandler fight. I thought that he looked really good towards the end of the first round before he got brought to the ground by Michael Chandler. And, even in that situation, was fighting off of his back, landing a lot of great shots off of his back against Michael Chandler. I think Tony Ferguson, this is a weight move that he's been teasing for a very long time and trying to get to for a very long time, trying to move up to welterweight, take on some competition up there. I feel like the UFC probably saw that Michael Chandler fight, saw what's been going on in Tony Ferguson's career. Obviously, at this point, it's not the most promising, but, I just think, I don't know what the statistics are, but there's been so many fighters that have been moving around weight classes. You have Dan Hooker moving down, Cody Garbrandt moving down, so many guys moving down or just moving weight classes in general and not finding success. I feel like Tony Ferguson is almost like, we're almost due for a guy that's going to move weight classes and be super successful this year. Maybe Tony Ferguson is that guy. I don't know. I'm not super confident in him, but I am going to take him in this one. I like him to potentially get it done. I like the chances that he has. I like the odds in this one. Plus 225 underdog for Tony Ferguson. Like I said, this is the day of the dog. So Tony Ferguson at plus 225, moving up in weight class. I'm sure his body at his spry young age of, how old is he now? He's
38.
38. He's almost 40 years old. I'm sure he's not missing cutting weight or as much weight. So all this is probably going to be super beneficial on him, on his body, on his health in general. And I'd like to see him carry on what he was doing in the end of that first round against Michael Chandler. against Li Jingliang, the Leech, this upcoming weekend. If he could do that, if he could put together some of those combinations that he had, then he may be very successful in this fight. What do you think about that one, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm as big of a Tony Ferguson fan as the next guy, but the reality of the situation is 3 months ago, he got one of the most vicious front kicks to the face that the sport has ever seen, and took a long time for him to even, remember or have his next memory, rather. So he was out, and once he came to, he was dazed for a really long time. And it was vicious, and that was at 155 pounds only 3 months ago. So he's coming in now on what is semi-short notice. I think he's only going to have a 3-week training camp, coming at 170 against a guy who's traditionally 170. The only thing I would be concerned about is Li Jingliang and his potentially short camp. He's coming back off of 1 month ago, he knocked out Muslim Salikov, which was a phenomenal showing on the part of Li Jingliang, who's a guy who traditionally has a really good chin. So I'm not so sure that Tony Ferguson is going to be able to go out there and chin Li Jingliang, essentially up a weight class. And I worry about the power coming back at Tony Ferguson. He's a guy who's, especially as of late, he's been getting hit a lot. And Li Jingliang, who's fast and powerful, with that potential, still rattling around brain that you alluded to earlier for Tony Ferguson, it's just a lot of things that are going into this soup are not making me very confident in Tony Ferguson. Now he is training back again with Eddie Bravo, and that was showing on his Instagram. So maybe they're going to go out there and try to have a little bit more of a submission and ground game style approach. But even that doesn't necessarily make me all that confident. I know that Tony Ferguson has more of a wrestling background and definitely a higher wrestling pedigree, but Li Jingliang is not totally inept. Don't let the Khamzat Chimaev fight fool you. He definitely has some ground game of his own. I don't think we're going to see a situation where Tony Ferguson is laying on Li Jingliang. I don't think we're going to see a situation where Tony Ferguson submits Li Jingliang. Certainly we could, and I would think that would probably be Tony Ferguson's best path to victory. But with all that being said, I just feel much more comfortable going with the bigger guy, Li Jingliang, at his more comfortable weight. He didn't get knocked out. He's, fought a month ago, and in that fight up against Muslim Salikov, he got that knockout. I believe it was in the second round. Let me double check that. He got it in the second round, 4:38 in. So took a little bit of damage there, but hopefully he can recover. Definitely nothing as bad as the skull rattling front kick that we saw from Tony Ferguson. So for that reason, I think it's a safer pick to go with Li Jingliang here.
Yeah, no, certainly a safer pick. I don't disagree with that whatsoever. And I'm just going with dogs this week. Dogs that I feel comfortable enough taking. We'll do it again in the pick rundown, but my whole main card might be all dogs, honestly. I'm just looking right now. I took Kevin Holland in the last one, so there's one that's not a dog. But anyways, and the main event right now is going to be a dog. But I think Tony Ferguson showed some promise the last time around. Anyways, we've got – sorry, you're switching the banners back and forth. That's on. But anyways, we've got the main event. I said it at the start of the show. We've got an unstoppable force and an object that just doesn't give a fuck in Nate Diaz. And, we love Nate Diaz over here. He's our guy. He's on our logo. I mean, obviously not the one that's on screen right now. That's Peyton Manning. That's the full team. But us picking fights individually, it's Nate Diaz. That's because, we're Nate Diaz fans over here. We do like Nate Diaz quite a bit. Does that mean that I feel like he's going to win this week? No. We all know Khamzat. I almost said it the way one of the guys that I work with. There we are. There's that logo. One of the guys that I work with always calls him Kismov. He just can't say his name right. So he's always like, yo, when's that guy Kismov fighting again? So I almost said it like that. It's Khamzat. It's not Kismov. But, anyways, Khamzat, we all know he's, especially after the Gilbert Burns fight, he's incredible. Super powerful, super strong. He's just a wrecking ball in there. Initially it looked like all he could do was wrestle, and then he went in, and not all he could do, but that was his, major strong suit. And then he goes in there against Gilbert Burns and slugs it out with one of the strongest guys in the division, in Gilbert Burns. So, I don't think that Nate Diaz has the best chance going into this one. I believe it's a minus 1,200 favorite for Khamzat versus a plus 630 dog for Nate Diaz. But you can never really count Nate Diaz out of a fight. That's not to say that I'm taking Khamzat. I'm taking Nate Diaz in this one. I am absolutely taking Khamzat. But Nate Diaz is a guy that doesn't really get finished unless it's by doctor stoppage. A la George Masvidal. He's a guy that anything could happen with Nate Diaz. Where say there's it's like that situation with Leon Edwards. In his fight before fighting for the belt. Leon's winning 4 rounds, and then at the end, Nate Diaz pulls that weird 1-2 out of his back pocket, but then instead of choosing to try and finish the fight, starts like laughing at fucking at Leon and twerking and shit. This might be a little bit more of a motivated Nate Diaz, where if he does somehow get into a situation like that where Khamzat's a little wobbled, whatever, which he does get wobbled. We saw it against Gilbert. He is human like the rest of us, and he does bleed. But in a situation like that, maybe this is a more driven Nate Diaz to go out on top of the win. Maybe if Khamzat does wrestle him and, Nate Diaz could bust out a submission from the bottom. But the most likely outcome in this one is for Khamzat to, I think, this one by decision or by doctor stoppage, just because of how good Nate's chin is, but how scarred up, and broken his face is. So, with all that being said, I am taking Khamzat, but you can't really count Nate Diaz out. So at plus 630 dog, I mean, I'm gonna definitely sprinkle a little bit on Nate Diaz just because. But I think Khamzat, if you could do a double chance bet on your book where it's to win by decision or TKO, I feel like that's a very smart way to go. What do you think about this one, Tom?
Yeah, I'm looking up Nate Diaz here, and trying to see if Best Fight Odds will give me odds for him, because for whatever reason it wasn't coming up. I'd be interested to see what those round props look like. I would think maybe the first or the second. I want to know where they put this fight, because who knows what's going to happen. Nate Diaz traditionally having a really solid chin, but like you alluded to, not totally impervious. Is a guy who was technically, as far as the record books go, finished by George Masvidal, but that was due to a doctor stoppage. I think what's ultimately going to happen, because Khamzat Chimaev, as long as he doesn't have any weight cut issues, if he comes in there with the same brawling mentality that he had against Gilbert Burns, I don't see why he's going to get it done. I think Gilbert Burns at this point in his career has a lot more power than Nate Diaz has. I know he did stumble and wobble Leon Edwards, but I think that was a little bit more of the complacency aspect on Leon Edwards' side, and I don't think that would happen again here. I think Khamzat Chimaev, at this point, Nate is just kind of being fed to Khamzat to give Nate one last parting gift before he leaves the UFC. I don't understand really where this rift came from. I think because Nate Diaz had been pretty difficult to work with in terms of making a fight with the UFC, but that was in response to the UFC not giving him fights that he felt that he was worthy on. But that was in response to the UFC getting recommendations for fights from Nate Diaz that he didn't, that didn't make any sense. Trying to fight Israel Adesanya or the Francis Ngannou and then pulling back the fact that he didn't want to fight them. It seemed like this is just kind of where the situation divulged, where Nate Diaz didn't see anyone he wanted to fight. He didn't like where the UFC was going. He wanted out, but they still wanted to have him fight. And then ultimately, this is where it's going to culminate with Khamzat Chimaev going in there at 28 years old with a really, really strong grappling base. If he's going to go in there, he could push Nate Diaz back up into the cage. What I think we're not going to see is the typical Nate Diaz fight where it's a little bit slower at times. He, launches off his shots. He could, try to pick his spot and get beaten up for a while. I don't think Khamzat is going to play that game. I think he's going to go in there and he's going to continue with the relentless pressure. I don't think that Khamzat Chimaev is going to fall for any of the typical Nate Diaz tricks. I don't think we're going to get a submission on the part of Nate Diaz. I don't think he's going to sub Khamzat Chimaev. And I don't think Nate Diaz is going to be able to put Khamzat Chimaev away. So all the signs are just pointing that Chimaev is going to get this done really quickly. I know that's not maybe the sexy pick of picking Nate Diaz or, Nate Diaz, he's going to pretend to be down. Here comes Khamzat following him to the ground, and out of nowhere, Nate Diaz off his back is going to be really dangerous and throw something up and, get a triangle here or there or get a rear naked choke. I just don't see that happening with Khamzat Chimaev. He battled pretty solidly on the ground with Gilbert Burns, who is a lot stronger at this point in his career and probably a little bit more worthy to be, fighting at 170 in terms of just, muscle and size than Nate Diaz. I think Khamzat Chimaev, he's big for 170, 180. He could do some damage at. You have Nate Diaz, who at 170, this point in his career, it's a means to an end to be able to fight. Cutting down to 155 wouldn't be good for anybody. His performance, his brain, his anything. At this point, I just don't see anything that's leading me to believe that Nate Diaz is going to get it done or that he's the right pick this week. So I know it's minus 1,200. I'm going Khamzat Chimaev. If Best Fight Odds was going to give me the opportunity to take a look, I would have said if I'm, what that over under is on rounds. I think maybe 1.5, maybe 2.5 rounds might be something to lay a little bit of money on to try and sweeten that line. But honestly, those are probably going to be minus 800, minus 900 too. And for what you're getting in return to the unknown factor of Nate Diaz, it's hard to place any bit of change on that. But I am going Khamzat Chimaev here.
Being that it's still so early in the week, the over-under isn't out yet, but on rounds. But you might get a laugh out of this. Will the fight go the distance? Yes, plus 520. No, minus 1350. So, it's going to be a super low over-under in that department. And, just in general, like KO, TKO combos, the least odds, the least payout is for Khamzat to win by KO in rounds 1, 2, or 3. Which, in some fights, some instances, you'll find that on the opposite end of the spectrum.
What's that looking like?
Plus 135, I believe. So
okay, I mean, I like that. I mean, Khamzat Chimaev went out and he had a crazy pace for 3 rounds. I don't know if Nate Diaz is going to be able to withstand that barrage the same way Gilbert Burns did. So I think maybe, taking that plus 130 in the first 3 rounds, maybe that's it. Or maybe just take Khamzat Chimaev by TKO because you lean on the fact that rarely happens with Nate Diaz. And, maybe that ends up being minus 300 or something. And it's a little bit better of a line for you. Hard to say, but I mean, I would want to verify that a doctor's stoppage definitely counts as a TKO victory.
Yeah, it's actually plus 115 for a Khamzat KO, TKO. So
okay, really I don't mind that.
Yeah, no, great line, honestly, for the amount of value as opposed to just betting minus 1,200 straight up. And just to the point of like I said, maybe Nate Diaz, for the storyline, whatever, locks up a submission from the bottom. It's very unrealistic. I mean, you mentioned how well he was on the ground, Khamzat, with Gilbert Burns, who, was trying to lock stuff up. He was locking up an arm bar, and Khamzat's up immediately, recognizes that, gets up, invites Gilbert Burns back up to the feet. Gilbert Burns is one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the UFC, multiple world champion. I don't think it's super likely that happens. It's just one of those things where, Nate Diaz is Nate Diaz at the end of the day, and crazy shit happens when Nate Diaz fights. So, I don't think he'll win, but I do think we'll have some entertaining moments. I don't know if it's going to be a complete slaughter from Khamzat. I think maybe Nate Diaz will land a couple of ones, point, laugh, flip him off a little bit, and then he'll get murdered by Khamzat. But I don't know. I'm good on that. You got anything else you want to say about that? About that fight or these fights before we run into our pick rundown?
No, I mean, it's a 5-fight main card at the price tag of $75. Still not enticing me.
Yeah.
To want to buy that. If it was 6 fights and maybe for $60, that would be a little bit better. I don't know why ESPN Plus subscribers don't get a discount. Like, it should be like a $70, pay-per-view, and then ESPN Plus, it's like 55 or 60. That may get more people to sign up for the ESPN Plus. But, we had talked this a couple times before. We don't know how much longer the UFC is going to stay with that ESPN Plus deal. So I don't know. But either way,
no, that's something
really good fights, regardless of the price.
That's something I've thought of as well. I don't even know what the cost of an ESPN, it just keeps going up, the ESPN Plus. But yeah, at least, there's like one pay-per-view a month, basically. At least eliminate the cost of the pay-per-view or eliminate the cost of the ESPN, monthly membership cost from the cost of the pay-per-view, if that makes sense. I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. For the $5 or whatever, take that off. So even if it's $65, I mean, I truly believe the reason that the UFC doesn't announce or say much about the pay-per-view buys is because they're so low, because it's $75. It's just too high of a price point. And them saying the cost of everything has gone up. Yeah, I get what you're saying there, but I mean, I just $75 is really expensive to get people to cough up nowadays. And when you're going to try and bolster and talk about pay-per-view buys, I mean, maybe there's a whole strategy to it that, we're not privy to. But either way, I'm ready for the pick rundown. What do you say?
All right, kick us off.
All right, so We got the music. We got the banner. Do we got the banner? We got the banner. All right, here we go. So, starting off at the bottom of the card, I am going to go with Johan Lainez over Darian Weeks. I'm also going to go just sprinkle a little bit on Danielle Wolf for the plus money, because that one I think is a coin flip with Norma Dumont. I like Danielle Wolf for the plus money. Jake Collier I think is going to get the win over Chris Barnett. I also kind of like Jamie Pickett over Dennis Tululin, but we didn't end up getting to talk about that too much. Jailton Almeida I think is going to get the win over Anton Turkaj, coming in on short notice here, 1 or 2 weeks out, just getting it thrown together after something fell apart. Jailton Almeida coming in at 220 here, not having to cut weight. I like him a lot. I think Hakeem Dawodu is also going to get it done over Julian Erosa, going to be able to keep the fight standing and pick him apart with those crazy leg kicks that he has. Moving on to the main card, I like Johnny Walker with the plus money to get it done over Jan Cutelaba, similar to Norma Dumont and Danielle Wolf. I view that fight as pretty much a coin flip, and who's going to land, who's going to come out crazier in the first round. Johnny Walker, SPG, working with Khamzat Chimaev as well. So maybe I like Johnny Walker. I think he's motivated, and Jan Cutelaba probably on the back half of his career. Johnny Walker wants to reignite it, so I'm going with Johnny Walker for the plus money. Irene Aldana back to the favorites. I like her over Macy Chasson. I'm going with Kevin Holland over Daniel Rodriguez. Kevin Holland is going to be a phenom, and he's going to be very interesting to watch for the foreseeable future. Very aggressive, submissions off his back. Travis Lutter, BJJ black belt, and just one of the best strikers that the UFC has to offer, and coming in at 180. He's fought at 85 and had success there. Don't think D-Rod's going to take him down in terms of a striking battle. I like Kevin Holland. Li Jingliang, unfortunately, is going to get the job done over Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson is very old. He's had a lot of damage, with the short turnaround from the knockout that he suffered against Michael Chandler just 3 months ago. I think there's a lot more on the Li Jingliang side, so I'm going to be the better there. And then Khamzat Chimaev, I think, is going to get it done over Nate Diaz. I don't see anything that Nate Diaz has coming back. It's going to be a threat for Khamzat Chimaev, and I think Khamzat is going to get it done. KO or TKO, taking that one just straight over the 5 rounds. Keith said it was like plus 130. I like that a lot better than minus 1200. Over to you.
All right, let's get it. So I am going with Johan Lainez over Darian Weeks. Going with Haile Alatang over Chad Anna.
Me too.
Yeah. Haile Alatang, that's a great pick. Again, same as Tom, sprinkling a little bit on Danielle Wolf over Norma Dumont, going with Jake Collier over Chris Barnett. And I'm going to go for the main card now. I'm taking Johnny Walker over Jan Cutelaba, underdog. I'm going with another underdog, and Macy Chasson over Irene Aldana. Going with one favorite on this main card. Well, actually, one of 2 favorites on this main card. Kevin Holland over D-Rod. Going with another underdog in Tony Ferguson over the Leech Jingliang. And I'm going with Khamzat Chimaev. Going with the same bet there. KO, TKO in rounds 1, 2, or 3 at plus 130. It's Monday. Snag it before it moves, and all the people get onto that bet, because that is going to move a lot. Wouldn't be surprised if that's minus money by Saturday. So, with all that being said, I want to say thank you to all you kind people at home that joined us for Labor Day. Hope you had a great day off from work. Hope you left us some comments down below. Really appreciate the people that engage with us today. Tom, I appreciate you being here as always. Lots of fun. Please, if you're at home watching this, like, comment, subscribe. It really helps us out a lot. Follow us on our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, @_PickinWinners. Got the ones that were below our faces in the corner the whole time. Listen to us on Spotify if you can't watch a whole YouTube video. I like listening back on my commute sometimes. And, that's social media that's down there as well. Give it a follow. But yeah, thank you, and enjoy the rest of this long weekend.